Congresswoman Cheney, who lost her primary bid this summer, is also part of a new push in the House to prevent any future attempts to overturn elections. Cheney introduced the Presidential Election Reform Act with Zoe Lofgren of California.
I want to be very clear that this is to prevent future attacks during election processes. No one should take our effort to reform the electoral count as any indication that Donald Trump did not violate the existing law or did not violate the Constitution.
Let's bring in senior national political reporter for NBC News, Sahil Kapoor. His newest reporting details what exactly is in the bill. We know there's also a competing effort in the Senate. Sahil, what can you tell us?
Hey, Jonathan. Well, this is where the rubber meets the road on the January 6th investigation and the legislative front. What they intend to do in Congress to prevent future attacks on the Capitol and to prevent future attempts to steal elections. Specifically, the Presidential Election Reform Act would amend an 1887 law called the Electoral Count Act, an archaic law that governs the counting of votes after a presidential election, to make a number of things clear. Firstly, the vice president's role is simply ministerial. She or he does not have the power to unilaterally reject votes, that their role is simply to count them. It would raise the threshold for objecting to certain electors and forcing a vote in Congress from what it is now, which is just one member of the House, one member of the Senate. Pretty easy to get. It would raise that to 1/3 of both chambers, which is a much higher bar that Donald Trump didn't have on January 6th. He would not have any basis to tell his supporters that there was any justification to try to discount electoral votes or overturn the election if this law was in place. That's a big part of what they're trying to do here. They're also trying to smooth the presidential transition and try to sort of election denier proof the election, if you will, make clear that state laws have to be set in advance as to how elections work, and that you can't look after the fact and try to change something about the election to, certify a different winner, and that the governor of a state has to certify the winner. They can't refuse to do that, and they have to do it in accordance with the laws. That is the crux of the House bill. Now, it's quite similar, Jonathan, to the Senate version. That's what's piquing a lot of optimism on Capitol Hill, that they can turn this bill into a law. There's a bipartisan product in the Senate written by Susan Collins, a Republican, and Joe Manchin, a Democrat, that is structurally quite similar. There are some differences, such as, their threshold is 1/5, not 1/3. The House bill creates a federal cause of action for candidates to sue if they're aggrieved, if they think the wrong candidate is being certified. The Senate version leaves it to states, but these are the kinds of differences that don't generally prevent a bill from ultimately becoming a law. These are the sorts of things that many senators I spoke to yesterday believe they can resolve.
Yeah, some real optimism surrounding this vitally important piece of legislation, even if perhaps it's not taken up until after the midterm. Senior national political reporter for NBC News, Sahil Kapoor, thank you so much for your reporting.